Uh, we will now start our next session, which is Finances and Partnership for the Goals. I would request Chairperson of the session, Ambassador Manjeev Singh Puri ji, to please come up on the stage. And I would request Supriyo Sinha sir, Chairperson BCCNI Leadership Institute and Director Business Transformation and Corporate Strategy, the PLS General Finance and Investment Company Limited. I would request Manjeev sir to take on the cue and commence the session. You'll be using hand mic? No, sir.
What do you want me to say? So let's start. Thank you very much, and thank you very much. This is always the toughest session, the one after lunch. First of all, you have to wake up. Secondly, you have to stop eating your lunch and you've got to come and listen to these guys. Not good. लेकिन हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं पैसा की. वो तो interesting होता ना. थोड़ा बहुत लोगों को interesting होता. Financing for sustainability. Now, Mr. Sinha, I don't know what your background is and what you do, but I'm sure you have much to contribute. So I want to tell you just this much, and I'll have to leave at 4 because I have a flight to catch. And I'm told that development has meant that the road from here to the airport takes 2 hours to traverse. Important. I appreciate that. Let's talk about money. You know, we are a huge, massive economy going towards $4 trillion and so on. But the kinds of monies which are required for sustainability in a big way are of multiples of this figure. Extremely difficult to do. Are we in a position to do it all by ourselves? A conservative answer from my side would be no. You need huge infusions of foreign capital. Today, the problem that we face is that the world's largest economy, the United States, is being officially switched off from doing anything on sustainability. i.e., with Mr. Trump calling climate change a hoax, what is happening is that the large funds, private equity and others, are hesitant because politics matters. It matters. They don't want to get into doing things which that particular side sees is no good. So there is a problem in terms of being able to leverage private capital from the largest market in the world. That doesn't mean it's impossible. There's much that you can do in European markets. There's much that you can do domestically. I'll just stop here and take a couple of questions, but Mr. Sinha to say whatever he wants before that. It's important in India, in my understanding, that we be a little clear on developing a taxonomy. Because taxonomies means there is clarity in what results in what you can do. So if you say ESG is important, green is important, sustainability is important, let it be the laid down criteria by which banks, financial institutions, PE firms, the capital market can judge you. Do you meet that? Now, we've been working on our taxonomies. In the end, we keep coming a bit short because what happens is the way we structure the taxonomy is we are not able to reach the high standards which are required in global markets, especially European markets, where the ESG screens are quite green. And you have problems. You know, we're not doing very well in getting pension funds from the UK, etc., to invest in green technologies in India. I hope that changes. We're working very hard with lots of people to do that. But on the other hand, I would tell every one of you, because you have agency, to turn around and tell to the governments, the others, the banks, etc., that look, sustainability is something critically important for us. It's not just that the RBI mandates something. Try and do that you can leverage money from people, from institutions in the country, and make it such a thing that it becomes attractive from outsiders to invest in the greening of India, the resilience build-up that we are doing. It's a tough call. It's not an easy call. But frankly, without paisa, it ain't gonna be an easy task at all. So Mr. Sinha, the microphone is yours.
I have, don't worry.
Yeah.
So I was actually asked to speak on the role of partnerships in on sustainability, but I think partnerships, you know, nothing will succeed without the paisa. So whether it's one player or different players, eventually things have to be commercially viable. So I'll share a couple of perspectives on what role partnerships can play in sustainability. And I think it will all add up to being commercially viable for everybody in a network. One of the things that come to our mind first when we talk sustainability or environment and climate change and so on and so forth is probably EVs. There are many things, but one of the things that come top of mind is probably EVs. And if you look at EVs, I was just putting down some figures. In year 2020, about 250,000 EVs were sold in India in the year, about 0.25, quarter of a million. In 2025, the EV sales will cross 2 million. In today, there are about 30,000 EV charging points across the country. By 2030, that 30,000 figure is likely to cross 1.2 million. Now, 40 times increase in 4 years. EV penetration was about 1% in 2020. Today, it is about 8%. In 4, 5, 6 years' time, it's likely to go in the range of 25-30%. Now, obviously, this is a very exponential jump in the adoption of EVs. Who manufactures EVs? Players like Mahindra, Tata's, MG, these are the top 3 EV players today in India. But if it was only Tata Motors, or only Mahindra, or only MG, or only anybody of the car manufacturers, do you think these numbers would have happened? Very unlikely. You need, right starting from the central government, you need the central government to put certain EV targets, to put certain environmental targets, to put some policies in place to encourage EV manufacturing. You need certain tweaks in things like, the GST rates. EV GST is just about 5%. It's very different from commercial vehicles. Now, who's going to put that policy? It is, at some level, it has to be the government. You need the local government to provide land, licenses, some of the concessions that are there for road tax for EVs. Those are provided by the local government. You need the battery manufacturers to work hand in hand with the auto manufacturers to make sure that the batteries they produce have a long life and they are compatible with the vehicles that the auto manufacturers are producing. Without which you have a car and you have a battery which is not compatible, or a battery which is compatible but that lasts only 1 hour, it will not work. And then you have, coming to finances, you have banks and NBFCs. And increasingly, banks and NBFCs have their own green targets. They have to report back to their own regulators on how much of green funding have they done. And they do provide 50 to 100 basis points of discount on interest rates, longer tenure of loans, etc. These are things that banks and NBFCs are providing to manufacturers to encourage EVs. You have a lot of these commercial fleet operators, the Olas, Ubers, and all of them. When the EVs come on road, actually, sometimes we realize, sometimes we don't, those are the guys who are adopting the EVs first. Because you need to get some sort of scale for the manufacturing cost to come down for people like you and me to be able to afford an electric vehicle. Now, those are the guys who are actually doing the first adoption so that the numbers go to a certain level, which will bring down the cost for retail consumers like us. So, the point I'm trying to make is, just building on what Mr. Puri said, is when we are talking about sustainability in any industry, it has to be in the context of business. Here it is in the context of business of a Tata Motors or an MG or a Mahindra or the battery manufacturer or the guys who are putting up the charging points. It has to be business, and therefore it has to be commercially viable. And you do need, and again, we sometimes don't realize that there is actually a whole network of entities which are playing together to bring some of these things to reality. You take any of these players that I mentioned out of the equation. Suppose the battery manufacturer did not exist. or the government did not give any incentive, either GST or road tax concessions for consumers to adopt. Or imagine there is no player who's putting up charging points. If you take any of these elements out, this whole thing will just collapse. So I'll pause there, but
So, Supriyo, if you might call you that, let me throw this idea. We'll ask you for, have you guys heard of the Ujala scheme? Do you all remember it? How do you think we were able to bring down the cost of LEDs? How do you think we did it? Are you familiar with what was done? Not in a simple methodology. LEDs was not a lab technology, it was a known technology. The costs of LEDs were very high. By simply placing mega buck orders, the costs were brought down. Today, try to buy an incandescent bulb in most major cities in India, you won't find anybody selling them. And that's exactly what was done. Can we do something similar? Is something possible in terms of aggregation? Aggregation of demand. But then I don't want to take anyone down the blue smart route, which was also aggregator. Sir, you had a question. Please ask. Please go ahead. Yeah, use this mic. We have only 15 minutes, so please feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, okay. So thank you so much. You raised the issue of EV. Now, whatever little I understand is that an EV is a vehicle which has to be charged the whole night, and then it has a battery which also requires whatever, manufacturing. So in a program on sustainability, because that charging has to come from electricity, which is generated in a thermal power station, which consumes enormous amount of fossil fuels. So how is this EV, the millions of EV in India today, taking the mission of sustainability forward? I'd really like to know.
And you know, they generally say, very simply they say, that you should electrify your economy, but green your electricity sector. That's what they say. So if you remember the first session here, there was somebody from the power distribution companies here. I think it was one of the senior officials there, who was telling you that more than 50% of addition to India's electric supply system is now in the area of the renewables. So we still have to reach there in actual generation terms. But the fact is that we are making major efforts in the country to try and give a push to solar, wind. Now we're looking at hydrogen, small nuclear reactors, every single one. You are absolutely spot on. Bijli is needed, without bijli kuch nahi chalega. Lekin bijli bhi green honi chahiye. That's also important, very important point. Anyone else? So everybody knows what to do. Koi paisa nahi chahiye, sir.
I'm from the water infrastructure sector, and we build, own, operate assets, including ETPs, STPs, etc. What we find is, without the government push, essentially in the municipality sector, you don't find the climate finance to fund long gestation infra projects like ZLD, zero liquid discharge, or ETPs, CTPs, and for an industry which is small, to aggregate each industry into a combined CETP, that is the combined effluent treatment plant, that financing, who is the counter guarantor for it? How do you take it out? We tried out in Rajasthan, in a couple of places. The industry doesn't get combined, so they say that the government will give you some subsidy but not element. So the GST is the same, 18%. There is no counter guarantor. Interest cost from a bank is around 14% or around 12%. Who is going to finance infrastructure for climate?
I think fantastic questions, and I don't think there is an easy answer. There are some sectors which have, over a period of time, found a solution, and there are many sectors which are yet to find the solution. I think the power generation sector has found some sort of a solution through the DISCOMs in the form of long purchase agreements, because the distribution companies have to distribute, and therefore they get into long purchase agreements, which basically creates a, what should I say, it gives the comfort to the financiers to finance such projects. In the private sector, like I was saying, in this whole EV thing, a lot of the commercial fleet owners are adopting EVs. They are also getting some benefits from the government, of course, and that is helping. Because when it comes to financing, basically the NBFC or the bank will look at what is the guarantee of the returns in simple terms. And if there are long purchase agreements, it gives the cushion and the risk perception comes down, and therefore the interest rates come down. But in the case of water, probably there isn't a solution yet. Honestly, I don't know if there is a ready-made solution.
Yeah, Supriyo, you're right, and this is a very important question. You know, which is why I mentioned to you the issue of taxonomies. You know, you need to do this, and you need to be serious about it. You know, it's not a question of taxonomy to satisfy global carbon policy space requirements, meeting the UNFCCC's goals. No, it's about actually doing it. So just as in Ujala, we said karna hai. The Ministry of Power put everybody together and forced the Bajaj and the Philips, etc. Come on, sell your lamps. But those chaps made enough money in terms of quantity. So in all these water projects, etc., frankly, it's not just the municipalities, but at level even above that, we will have to talk in terms of aggregation. You will have to make things out. But do remember what Supriyo had said. If there's no money to be made by those who are in the business will flop. So Philips made money. It's not that they didn't make money. And they made as much money as they would have by selling bulbs at a much higher rate, but much smaller amounts of bulbs. So you need to remember that they also have to have a return of investment. Their ROIs also need to be good. They also have to return to their investment. So it's a very important point. I think this is something that we should flag. If this is the chamber, we should flag this. Take water as an example. It's a critical area for India. We must do that. Let's get thinking moving in that direction. That's important. Thank you very much for this. Truly, what should I say? $1 million question. Sir, we seem to have sorted out money. The floor is yours. Thank you very, very much for this.
I would just request my colleague Ananya to hand over the memento. Ananya, can you please come and hand over the memento, please? I would request Ms. Shoma Mitra Mukherjee, the Assistant Director General of BCCNI, to please do the honors. Shomati, can you please come up on the stage? Yeah. To Manjeet Singh Puri ji. To Supriyo Sinha sir. Thank you. Yeah.